"Move your truck, old man. This isn't a junkyard." That was the barked command from a security guard across the lot, motioning with authority toward the dusty pickup idling in front of the event hall. The voice cut through the autumn morning, drawing curious glances. The old man didn't respond. No protest, no complaint. Just a slow nod, the kind you give when you've heard worse and survived it. He stepped aside and opened the passenger door. Out stepped a man who commanded more than attention. He was a four-star general in full-dress uniform, rows of medals catching the light like quiet thunder. He didn't say a word either. He didn't need to. His presence alone rewrote the moment. If that made you stop scrolling, pause and comment. Respect for those we misjudge, for the quiet strength they carry. Frank Deacon, 77, had driven that same battered Ford F-150 to the VA clinic every Thursday for years. It rattled, squeaked, and groaned in all the ways a veteran might. The paint had long faded, patches of rust eating through where blue once lived. The radio hadn't worked since the first Bush administration, but it ran. That was all Frank ever asked of it. The truck, worn and weary, bore the marks of a life lived. Its mirror dangled like a loose tooth, held by sheer will and wire. A faded bumper sticker read, "If you can read this, thank a teacher. If you can read it in English, thank a veteran." Words many had seen, but few really read. That morning, Frank had picked up an old friend. Retired General Harold Greaves, a man he called Gal, ever since a typo in a deployment order had mixed up their initials back in Nam. The nickname stuck, just like the bond forged in battle. Harold was in full-dress blues, his frame older but upright, the weight of his years carried with military pride. As the truck hit the usual potholes, Harold adjusted his medals. "Still refuse to get a new one?" he grumbled, voice rough with age but soft with fondness. Frank chuckled, tapping the dashboard affectionately. "She gets me where I need to go. Just like that old Jeep in Quang Tri." Harold nodded, a knowing glance shared between men who'd once relied on busted engines and busted knuckles to stay alive. They were on their way to a Medal of Honor ceremony at the City Civic Center. A young Marine was being recognized for valor in Afghanistan. Harold, one of the few living recipients, had been invited as a guest of honor. When they arrived, the lot was choked with shiny government SUVs and polished black sedans. Not a spot left. So Frank pulled up close to the curb, not in the way, just close enough to spare Harold's aching hip. As Frank stepped out to assist his friend, a security guard with a walkie-talkie and too much authority for his own good shouted, "Move your truck, old man! This isn't a junkyard. VIPs are arriving." Snickers followed from a couple of event staff, dressed in stiff suits, holding red carpet checklists. One leaned in and muttered, "Can you believe that thing? I can hear the tetanus from here." Frank didn't flinch. He'd stood still through incoming mortar fire. A man with a reflective vest didn't even register on the threat scale. He simply nodded and opened the passenger door, slowly, with care. And out stepped General Harold Greaves. 4 stars gleamed, medals swayed with precision. His posture straightened against the autumn wind. In an instant, the laughter died. The guard's face turned the color of chalk. "Sir, I didn't realize." Harold looked at him, not unkindly, just clearly. "Next time, look before you bark, son." That was all. No lecture, no anger, just a reminder that judgment travels faster than truth. A hush fell. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "Is that?" But no one moved. Frank helped Harold adjust a medal that had shifted in the ride, then handed him his cane. Oak, hand-carved, a gift from a Marine unit who'd served under him. "You good?" Frank asked, low. "Always am when I've got you near," Harold replied. The same line he'd said when Frank pulled him from the wreckage of Firebase Ripcord in '71. They walked toward the entrance, an unlikely duo, one gleaming with honors, the other in worn jeans, flannel, and a faded VFW cap. Inside, the coordinator, a flustered woman in her 60s juggling a clipboard and headset, rushed up. "General, we were beginning to worry. The ceremony starts in 20. She paused. She looked back toward the entrance. Her eyes widened. "Wait, you came in that truck?" Harold smiled, the smile of a man who had steadied frightened troops before combat. "It's not about the ride, ma'am. It's about who's driving." Frank tried to slip into a back row, but Harold's hand on his elbow stopped him. "Front row. With me. Gal, that's not my place." "It has been since 71. Frank ended up in the middle rows, compromising. Comfortable in the quiet. No spotlight, no name tags, no salutes. Just a man watching history repeat itself. The young Marine was honored. Applause rang out. Flashbulbs popped. But when Harold took the podium, he held the microphone with a soldier's steadiness. "This medal," he said, touching the pale blue ribbon on his chest, "was earned in a foxhole, but it was brought home in the back of an old truck driven by the bravest man I know." Gasps. Heads turned. He pointed to the crowd. "Frank Deacon." He never got a medal like this. He should have. Drove into an artillery barrage to pull me and 3 others out. He's still driving me now, making sure I show up. Frank shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable. His calloused hands fumbled with the brim of his cap. Then it happened. The room stood. Not for Harold, not for the young Marine, but for the man in the back row, an old man. Grease-stained hands, quiet demeanor, steel in his spine. The security guard who'd barked earlier pressed himself against the wall, shame painted across his face. The coordinator wiped away a tear. The Marine on stage saluted him. Harold finally had done what he'd tried to do for 50 years, make sure the man who saved him was recognized. News spread before the ceremony ended. A phone video captured Frank's stunned expression. The applause. The moment truth overpowered assumption. By nightfall, the hashtag #RealHeroes trended. By morning, every news outlet wanted the story. Frank told a local reporter, "Just did what anyone would have done." Harold corrected him. "They ran." Frank drove toward the fire. That week, Frank sat down for an interview in his modest living room. The story poured out. Hot wiring an ammo cart, driving through shell fire, making tourniquets from his own shirt. The VA added a new parking sign, reserved for Frank Deacon, hero in plain clothes. Veterans mailed patches. Kids sent letters. Donations came in to restore the truck. A Marine motor pool drove across 3 states to do the job, but they left the dents. "Battle scars," the lead mechanic explained. "Part of her story." On the tailgate, "You don't need stars to earn respect." Neighbors who never knew his story now waved. Veterans saluted. Children pointed. One day, a boy approached him. "Are you the guy with the truck? My dad said you saved a general. Said that makes you one too." Frank's throat tightened. "I just showed up when it mattered. That's what we did. That's what good people still do." At the next Medal of Honor ceremony, Frank didn't sit in the back. He sat beside Harold. When the anthem played, 2 men stood straight, one in polished medals, the other in work boots, equally proud, equally worthy. When asked how to be brave like him, Frank replied, "You decide some things and some people are worth the risk." The old truck still runs, still parks in that same spot every Thursday, still carries its hero, quietly, reliably. Subscribe to Ironheart Stories if you believe heroes don't always wear medals. Sometimes they drive the ones who do.